Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Play Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous, where last episode we became God, I think. I think that's what happened. We finished defeating the demons at the Grey Garrison, and we got to choose our mythic path. We got infused with some sort of, I don't know if it was divine power or what. I'm guessing it was divine power, but we got infused with a shit ton of power, and we kicked Minago's ass. But she escaped with Staunton Vaughn, who has betrayed us and sided with the demons. But we won the day. We kicked the demons out of Canabras, and during the celebration, Queen Galfrey arrived secretly and joined us in the celebrations. And now we're at our war camp here, as we are the Knight Commander of the 5th Crusade. It's all very exciting, I think. So in this episode, we're going to look around the camp, and we are going to read our books. Today will be the book reading episode, the first one. We've got quite a bit of books here, but we'll see how long it takes. I don't know how long it'll actually take. But first, let's go ahead. Actually, let's read the books first. What is this? I can go into my tent. Let's go into our tent and read the books. I'm assuming this is my tent. I'm the commander. Queen Galfrey is here, and so is somebody named Leoter Hawkblade. Don't think we've met them before. Oh, or Nora, or Social. Okay. I'll just go to my private quarters over here. Sit on the bed, maybe lay down, lounge a bit. And we're going to read. Now, I'm pretty sure we have read all of the notes, all the pages, right? I'm pretty sure I've been reading those as we've been getting them. So we can skip those. Yeah. Okay, so the first book we have is 1,000 Revolutions. For the third night in a row, I've dreamt of the Grey Gardeners knocking at my door. I cannot believe it is my turn to be cut down by a blade washed in the blood of 1,000 revolutions, as a wave of popular outrage washes over me as my head tumbles down the steps of the scaffold. We take up the sword, and by it we shall perish. Once we struck down the imperial scum, but now it is we who must face the blade. The insurgent beast called Revolution will never be sated. It needs new victims. This time, it's my comrades and I. The cruelty of the hoarders in power echoes in the cruelty of the paupers, now intoxicated by their own freedom. We wanted change? Well, here it is. This is a country now of mad fanatics, fighting their treacherous past every day. Former friends are today's foes. My workshop has been converted into a secret headquarters. If I could do it all over again, I would repair to my easel and refrain from the cause that has sent me down this path. Alright, so the Grey Gardeners are some sort of revolutionary force. Alright, next book. Adventures of a Fearless Crusader, Briggy the Sausage Maker. Alright, this one's got some length to it. Okay. By Berthemil of Pitax, the Sharp Word Publishing Company. For dinner, the wounded were served cabbage soup. This didn't surprise them in the slightest. They'd had the same dish for dinner for a week. The hospital's residents used to be lucky enough to get potatoes and even turnips sometimes. But about a month ago, the Knights of the Order of the Thrice Holy Shining Sun and Dissipating Darkness Scimitar of our beloved goddess, Sarenrae, accidentally shot a catapult the wrong direction and annihilated the cart of the farmer who supplied the hospital with these vegetal delicacies. Ever since, the wounded only had cabbage soup for dinner, occasionally with a bit of protein when the odd cockroach crawled into the pot. That's delicious. After enjoying the delightful meal, the wounded stuffed their smoked pipes with something which rather more resembled hay than tobacco. Their bad habit demanded the inhalation of some smoke or other after mealtime, but with these practical matters happily resolved, they fell to talking. "Which demon do you think is the most dangerous?" asked Woolslich, the spearman, scratching the stub of his leg with the stub of his arm. "I think it's Abercandalus. Those monsters are cunning and sneaky, almost like Varisians, and their teeth are even sharper. Look," he illustrated his point for his comrades by holding up his remaining fingers, 2.5 of them. "It depends on the way you look at it," answered Gregley, the artillerist. Though she could hardly look at it at all, her eyes were covered with bandages. Your Abercandalises are easy pickings, but Baylor's are a different thing. He hits you with a whip, and your eyes pop out." She waved her pipe energetically, casting its contents into Woolslich's face. While the latter was coughing and brushing himself off, Briggy joined the conversation. "Baylor's and Brickandalis are all right, I suppose, but I'd say there isn't a demon in the world scarier than a regular louse. Of course, the other demons can teleport places, but the louse doesn't even need to do that. Wherever you look, it's already there." Then he stuck his hand under his shirt, pulled out the subject of his speech from somewhere in his armpit, and demonstrated it to his friends. "You can run away from a big demon with a whip, but who can run away from lice? They sting everyone, from the foot soldier to the general. Even the queen herself isn't immune. Now you might say it doesn't do much harm. After all, how much blood can one louse drink? But I'm telling you, think how much soldiers' blood they've drunk altogether. It's got to be a whole sea, wouldn't you think? More than all the demons in the abyss. And if anyone tells me a louse isn't a demon, then ha ha to them. Could a monster like that come from anywhere besides the abyss?" Alright, so that was a little bit of a comedy, but we did learn a little bit about a couple different types of demons. The Baylor and the Acrondalis, or whatever it was called. What was it called? Already going back to the book. Abercandalus. Yeah. Angels. And lice. Can't forget about lice. The most evil of demon. Angels. Celestials native to any of the 3 upper planes of creation. Servants of the good gods. Angels have come to Crusaders' aid in their fight against the world ruin more than once. It's worth noting that most of those who interfered in mortal life were driven by their own free will and not by any deity's order. However, the good gods do not forbid such impulses, allowing the Celestials to seek a reckoning with the forces of evil. Okay, so Iomade might not even supported the angels. Interesting. At least not directly. Battle in the Valley of Fire by Luris Aldori. Argon was knocked flat. He laid gasping, arms spread, a lump of rage rising in his throat. He remembered his dream: black soil, red ravens in an empty sky, their coarse croaks ringing in his ear like a taunt. Coral would never take Rosalind. Never. Aldori sprang to his feet, as if the blood-soaked soil was driving him forward. With a cry of rage, the Sword Lord rushed into the battle. The sky turned scarlet with blood, as he furiously chopped off his enemies' heads. The scarlet horizon drew closer, and its roar nearly drowned out the sound of battle. Argon looked at the sky, and the fiery blast descended upon him. There were no ravens that circled above him. The fearsome breath of the red dragon of coral melted the soldier's armor and turned the living flesh to ash and dust. I think this is referencing... I remember in the last game, there was like an ancient battle, or an ancient war, where like a family who were connected to the dragon of coral, like, conquered the land, but then they disappeared. I don't think we ever solved that mystery in the last one. Like, the royal family just up and disappeared. But I think this is referencing that story. Wonderful learn more about that at some point. Cooking Almanac of the Inner Sea by Jubilos Northropple. This guy was a companion in the last game. It is perhaps Aviston's most popular dish. In the capital of Cheliax, it is baked in a cheese crust and sprinkled with lemon juice. The local fishermen use a different cooking method in Kadira, which is on the opposite end of Aviston. There, you will find it finely chopped and mixed cold ingredients. The exact origin of the dish remains unknown, but it is generally believed to have been invented in Andoran and spread around the globe by seafarers and pilgrims. It's served as plain pâté in the most basic version. To prepare it, soak the herring in spiced marinade, then mince it into a spreadable paste. Add a mashed tart green apple, hard-boiled quail eggs, the freshest butter you can find, and half an onion. The list of ingredients may vary in the inland regions. In the region of Nermathis, beef or lamb is used for the snack. I once tasted a highly original and equally highly disgusting version cooked with milk and mushrooms on the border of Druma. Alright. Maybe I'll try and cook that in real life. Probably not, though. Alright, so here we got Fairy Tales of Aviston. A long time ago, in a time before remembering, there was a furious god known as Rovagug, a terrible giant worm with 1,000 teeth and claws. He devoured every world in his path, one after another. But the great gods were displeased with the beast, and delivered unto Rovagug their scourge. Many laid down their feuds to combine forces. Mighty Torag, brilliant Sarenrae, vicious Asmodeus, crafty Calistria, cold-blooded Pharasma, and many others. Together, they faced Rovagug as he arrived to swallow Galarian. The goddess of the sun, Sarenrae, forbade Rovagug's death, and so the gods imprisoned the fiend deep in the ground, shackled and sleeping. Asmodeus himself would keep the keys to his bonds. The terrible monster remains there still, asleep in his prison. Whenever Rovagug rolls over in his sleep and scratches his back against his prison walls, the earth trembles and volcanoes spit fire. Yeah, this is something that we'll hear a lot of about Rovagug and being imprisoned in the heart of Galarian. And interestingly enough, I don't know if this is canon in the games, but I think in the lore of Pathfinder itself, Sarenrae was actually an angel in this fight, and her deeds during the fight earned her godhood. I think that's her lore. I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I've read it, but I think that might have been it. I remember it just because it sounded really awesome. Okay. Next up, Fanfare of the Faithful. Alright, this is a lengthy one too. Okay. As soon as the supplies for the festivities had been brought into the city, and the heralds had spread the news throughout the localities, the celebration began. Thousands of Canabricians took to the street to hail their stalwart defenders. Trumpeters and drummers opened the procession, with the orders following behind. The Crusader brethren, with their gleaming steel and their banners flying high. The first to come were the ever-bright Crusaders, the most virtuous and righteous of all Canabris' defenders. So deep was their devotion that, when confronted with the shouted greetings and the glinting of adoring eyes, many of the knights began to pray as though attempting to ward off sinful pride. Leading the contingent and flanked by higher-ranking Crusaders was the Order's commander, the esteemed Sierre Cobellin, who is a father to his soldiers and a mentor to his recruits. Next came the Order of the Flaming Lance, those indefatigable persecutors of evil and vice, renowned for their doggedness and fortitude. A heavy shadow veiled the faces of those Crusaders, who too often witnessed the monstrous nightmares of the world wound, and who daily risk their very souls in service of the vulnerable and defenseless. Commander Miamir, famed for her scholarship and sagacity, I don't know, marched with the Order's rank and file. The procession continued with the Crusaders of the Order of the Sunrise Sword. At the sight of their banners, many in the crowd began singing songs and ballads composed long ago by the valiant souls of this order. The spark of inspiration that once breathed life into poetry and odes has grown among the members of this order into a blaze of righteous purpose, which has allowed it to wage war against the abyss with ever greater success. Ashes Strieger led his order, nodding to the welcoming crowds. Also in evidence among the pennants of the orders were those of the Inquisitors, the followers of Prelate Horn. Fuck that guy. Relentless witch hunters who devote their days and nights to punishing traitors and heretics. Bringing up the rear of the parade under the command of Arabeth Terabade was the unassuming Eagle Watch, who apply their talents to sniffing out enemy spies in the city. The Eagle Watch was the humblest of all the orders in attendance, surpassed by all the rest in both size and splendor. Proceeding past the gates, the cavalcade made its way through the city's streets to the guard of honor, waiting to greet the noble heroes, along with Terendelev herself, and propria persona. So this is a relatively new book. If it has Terabade in it. That was that one. So now we are at Guide for Travelers, Hunters, and Explorers of the River Kingdoms, Volume 5, Monsters and Beasts. Will-O-Wisp, an amusing glowing ball, which looks harmless and doesn't arouse any natural suspicion. Pretends to be a guiding light in the marshes, but leads travelers to certain death. The agonizing fear of their victims is the monster's nourishing dinner. If you manage to resist their tricks, make sure you have some electrical protection. This monster electrocutes any visitor it fails to lure into terror. Okay, so this is actually really useful for combat. So Will-O-Wisps deal electrical damage. Werewolf. Werewolves prefer to hunt in groups and attack lone travelers. It's entirely possible that a Varisian camp or troop could turn into a pack of bloodthirsty lycanthropes under cover of darkness. Ordinary weapons stand little chance against them, but a silver blade greatly increases your chance of survival. Primals. Powerful creatures of the primal realm occasionally visit this world for amusement. It's best to stay out of a primal's way. Don't fight it. It's extremely dangerous. But if a life is at stake, resort to cold steel. Okay. I think that water elemental in the shield maze was considered a primal. How to make money during the war against demons. My mentor and training partner used to feel sorry for me. I had enough power to summon and hold a lesser imp at best. Would you call that real magic? Ha! But there's nothing a smart lad like me can't use to stake out his reputation and make his fortune. There's one particularly nasty sort of demon called an abracadabras. They're made of the souls of vandals and destroyers of art. In demon form, they continue to do the same. When they see beautiful pictures and statues, they fly into a rage and desecrate them. I once overheard a conversation on the street between two art collectors. They couldn't decide whether they should patronize a young and promising artist or a famous maestro whose best days were behind him. So I made them an offer. How about we place the two paintings side by side, and I'll summon an abracadilu. Whichever painting it attacks first would naturally be the more beautiful. The key was to banish the demon in time before it destroyed the painting, but that wasn't going to be a problem for me. The collectors agreed to run this experiment according to my plan, and thus my legacy began. 3 months later, not a single art event could do without me and my demon servant. We were invited to exhibition openings, appraisers' workshops, and auctions. The more the enraged demon became, on seeing another carving or slapdash daub, the higher its price soared. and they paid me well for my appraisal. I often staged artist battles, in which the demon would choose which of the two paintings it despised most, and the tickets sold like hotcakes. However, there was one unfortunate incident. A gnome and an elf came to me from Absalom, two young bright-eyed artists. They wanted to enter one of these battles, but they offered peculiar sculpture arts instead of paintings. The gnome had a huge pile of nibbled apples preserved by a spell. The elf had a watering can without any holes, which stood on a cart with one square wheel. This, as they explained to me, was modern art. It was how did they put it? Unconventive. Yeah, or some such thing. They claimed it was popular in Absalom, where the gnome and the elf were very famous, unconventive artists. Well, my job is simple, to display their work, gather an audience, and release my demon from its prison. And that's precisely what I did. But the abracadillo came out of his cage, looked at the apples and at the watering can with the cart, and then looked at me like I was a complete idiot, turned around and went back to its cage with an expression of utter disappointment. It was nearly an international scandal. I was so upset that I even returned the money for their appraisal to the gnome and the elf. But it's all right. My business still thrives even without the Absalom clientele. Meanwhile, where are my more talented fellow apprentices? Half are still crouched over books, learning what they can. The other half went off to those ridiculous crusades and perished. They never considered that demons can be used to make money, and a lot of it. I think I'll soon buy myself a little palace, and cover its walls with works of all the most famous artists. Ha! Very clever. So, obviously, the joke there is that modern art isn't art, and that's why the demon didn't destroy any of it, because it's not art. Okay, In Search of Joy, Confessions of a Heretic. I take a deep breath and stand still. I long to absorb every moment of joy and hail the evaporation of someone else's soul from their thickening blood. The border between reality and dream fades. It seems that everyone beyond the wall can hear the throbbing in my head, but it's only my fantasy. A ringing silence fills the room. The fifth sacrifice has been made. My mistress, the most beautiful of goddesses, will be happy. I will take care of everything. Fragrant flowers, cut at the climax of their beauty, are now a part of the masterpiece, which is worthy of Shelyn herself. So what if the narrow-minded priests rejected me and my gift? I serve the never-fading rose herself, not the worms that bite into her stem and suck at her life-giving juices. It won't be long now before I finish my job. I've already found the material. Her eyes are gray, and her hair is dark blonde. She is fading into the dirt. I will rewrite her destiny. Alright. Creepy fanatic there. What do we have here? Of the nature of the divine. Can a mortal become a god? Is the very idea blasphemy? Science relies on experience, where there may be evidence presented in support. But when science encounters theology, it recoils. The term evolution has no application to the divine spark that illuminates dull matter in incomprehensible ways. The foremost example is angels, to whom we owe the existence of our virtuous mortal souls, which brings us to a paradox. A mortal soul transforms into an immortal essence. There are many such breathtaking events, which each promise a connection to the divine. Sunny Sarenrae is a perfect proof of this. The Starstone trial desecrated divinity, turning it into a god's exam, where any trickster with a handful of spells, who can avoid some traps in a deadly maze, may rise to divinity. Is the nature of divinity then so sacred indeed? So yeah, I think this is referring to what I was talking about earlier, how Sarenrae was an angel that became a god, I'm thinking. And then this one is probably talking about Kaelin Cadian, is that his name? Or Caden Kalian? I think it's Caden Kalian, who was like a drunken rogue who passed the test and became a god. Where are we now? This one? Yeah. Prodigal son. Prodigal sons. It's done, I said. Milliken studied me with narrowed eyes. You look awfully clean, he said. Where's the knife? In answer, the first shouts went up from the inn. Fire! Screamed Elna, and then other voices joined hers. In an instant, Milliken's entrepreneurial instincts took over, and he sprang for the door, tossing the crossbow aside. Outside, the roof of the inn was already smoking oily black against the sunset. Flame? I think that's supposed to say flame. Flame licking through the thatching in places. With a scream of pain, Milliken ran for the creek. I looked to Fargus. Needing no further cue, we each grabbed up an armful of supplies and sprinted off in the opposite direction. After 10 minutes of leaping brambles and ducked branches, we stopped to catch our breath. Back the way we'd come, the smoke was still visible, though the sounds had faded to just the faint and frantic pealing of a church bell. That was close, Fargus said, leaning against a tree and breathing hard. Agreed, I puffed, staring down at the cloak full of bread that now made up our sole possessions. Then the sound of the bell reminded me of something. About what you said back there, I asked. You said Shaylin. I thought you were a priest of Desna, Fargus grunted. A man's faith is a personal thing, he said, tying up the cloak. Now shut up and keep running. And we did. I don't, the meaning, or the moral, the meaning, whatever you want to call it, of that one passed me by. Maybe it's just a story, I don't know. Sarkorian faith. Imperial Lord Pulura, Mistress of the Stars and Mysterious Light of the Aurora, is one of the most revered deities of Old Socorus. Her worship was widespread among the Kelids, who built numerous shrines in honor to their patrons. The foremost of these shrines, considered practically cherished and sacred, was located on a lake shore surrounded by a picturesque waterfall called Pulura's Fall. We saw a statue of Pulura in the basement of the Defender's Heart. I think that was what it was. Secret overlords, the essence of the world order. Until recently, we knew this world as it was described in books and stories. A sewer, torn apart by hyenas that separate us with nations and borders, oppress us with extortion and lies, and assert their authority and power. However, someone else's hand rules these slaves who act like masters. It's a threat far more intimidating than a handful of arrogant fools. Our lands are secretly ruled by the most ancient creatures of Golarion, the inhabitants of the ever-dark depths, who know both past and future. People are led along paths they cannot see, and do not have the power to leave, to an end known only to our hidden masters. Some insist that the signs are purely coincidental, but they point to a vast conspiracy. Only a fool can fail to see how the myriad coincidences weave into a great cobweb. Or they have submitted their very will and sworn their allegiance to our unseen masters in the depths. That's ominous. Hopefully that's not true. Shadow of Absalom by Pax Grumetra. Nuan Quant peeped through a slit in the window shutter. The visitor was staggering out the porch. Nuan had promised himself many centuries ago that he'd never have to deal with halflings again. After the case of Clockwork Head, even the bleaching is better than some adventures. So the bleaching is a gnome condition. The older a gnome gets, the closer they get to bleaching. I forget exactly what bleaching is, but it's not good for gnomes. However, there was something disturbing in the visitor's appearance. Something was wrong. What do you say, Kexi? His assistant sat at the next window with yarn and knitting needles in her hand. Look at his clothes. They're second-hand. He's a hobo. He is, but you're not quite right. Look at his feet. Kexi looked, trying to make out at least something in the faint light of the lantern above the door. Are those... He was shackled? Rather than answering, the gnome stepped towards the door. We shall need a doctor. As if to prove his words, the guest faltered and collapsed onto the knees, and fell head first onto the doorstep. Interesting. Stories told us by the spirits. Stories told us by spirits. The Knight with the Harrowed Hand, Canabras Medium Alliance Publishing. The demon put 2 plates on the table in front of me, on each a bleeding human heart. Look, he says, the right one belongs to a noble and righteous man, a loyal servant of Iomade. The left one is the heart of a murderer and a scoundrel, though something tells me they taste exactly the same. I remain silent and don't move. I couldn't if I tried. One of my hands is pinned to the wide armrest with a knife thrust to the hilt. The other, similarly, pinned helpless on the table. The demon circles and carefully brushes away a strand of hair that stuck to my forehead. Your silence saddens me. Don't waste your time by this performance, monster, I say, though I have scarcely the energy to breathe. If you wish to torture me, go ahead. If you want to kill me, then kill me. My life is in your hands, but my soul is not, and never will be. The hearts on the plates in front of me continued oozing blood. They've only just been ripped from their owners' bodies. The right one, apparently, belonged to my partner, the left one to the criminal we were escorting. But the demon, who'd set his lair in the old mill, killed without discrimination. He walked around the armchair and stopped behind my back, placing a clawed hand on my shoulder. This is not a performance at all. It is a feast, and I will be sated. No, not with this. You can see my eyes still on the hearts. With you. It's your heart that's in front of me right now. So helpless. The claws on my shoulder tighten a bit. Goddess, help me endure. After a moment, the demon continues. You know what you don't understand, you zealous servants of the law and good? He seems to like the sound of his own voice. It was you who brought us to your land. The more of you who gather here at the edge of the world wound, so brave, burning with righteous wrath, the more like me will come from the abyss. It's not because we want to win a war and conquer your world. Perhaps our lords want this, but trust me, they are as far removed from their subjects as your lords and kings are from you. No, we come for the likes of you, for the persistent and the proud who won't break until the end, for those whose suffering is sweet and lasts for the sweets. He appears in front of me again, licking his lips. I well know that he'll never grant me a quick death. Damn, that's rough. Alright. Temples of Iomade. Father Lorien's Guide to Neophytus? Neophytus, I think, is how it's pronounced. Maybe. Traveler, if the road ever takes you to the outskirts of Canabras, do not shy away from taking a few more steps and entering the city proper. Apart from the ramparts and the fortifications that stand unshaken, barring the path of humanity's foes, and the noble orders that keep their watch against the forces of evil, Canabras holds a treasure of a different sort. In the days of old, in the fire and the upheaval of the Second Crusade, it became the site for the first and the most crucial of the ward stones, sacred obelisks that have the power to avert a demonic scourge, no matter how accursed it may be. No evil creature can pass betwixt 2 such stones that now stand along the edge of the world wound and shelter the peace of all Galarian. Even vile demonic magics are powerless against them, for the abyss cannot cross the unseen curtain of the ward stones. Should you arrive at the right time, and be virtuous and respectful towards those who guard the ward stone, shall be granted the great honor of sharing in one of the rituals that support the magical strength of that holiest obelisk. This artifact and the spells invested in it are the most sacred, for every wardstone was raised by the herald of Iomade himself, the closest of her servants, one who is selflessly devout to the inheritor's cause and the crusader's great mission. And even if you cannot reach the wardstone, Do honor Iamde's splendor in one of Canabras's churches, and pay thus your respect to the humankind's protector and the sacrifices made by the Crusaders for the good of our world. Yep, that's all good. Although, did they say what's happening now? We destroyed that wardstone, right? Like, it's no longer active. So is there like a big hole in the curtain now? Isn't that a problem? I guess that just means we have to succeed, right? Like, if the 6th or the 5th Crusade fails, they're probably just gonna pour through that hole in the wardstones, right? It's not good. All right, Tyrendelev, the Guardian of Canabras, rest in peace. Canabras has no shortage of prominent figures, both those who long passed away and those who still reside within the city walls. But it is safe to say that the greatest guardian there ever was, is and will be, is the silver dragon Tyrendelev. Among metallic dragons, the silver kind in particular has high moral standards. Although, like most of their kin, they often remain indifferent to the matters concerning mere mortals. They find it unbearable to watch impassively as injustice and crime are committed with impunity. Gazing down upon Galarian from above, Tyrendelev has seen her share of injustice and violence, but no tragedy disturbed her peace more than Mendev's war against the world wound. Drawn into action by her curiosity and her interest in the Crusaders that paid for others' peace with their own blood, Tyrendelev swooped down from the mountains and walked among the humans, taking on their form. This world must have felt so odd to her, so different from her own. Luckily for her, Tyrendelev was not the only dragon living among the mortals, and the wise gold dragon Heliax became a mentor for Tyrendelev and her sworn brothers, Savavros, who later mysteriously disappeared from history and human memory. During her life amidst mortals, Tyrendelev performed many heroic deeds. She fought terrifying abyssal spawn, kept Canabras safe from enemies' onslaught, and personally saved Crusaders in need. In one such excursion, she herself fell victim to demonic taint. Onlookers reported that her shining silvery armor darkened, her eyes clouded, and her speech and movements became ruthless and crude. But so great were her spirit and determination that she achieved the impossible. She overcame the seed of evil planted in her very heart and returned to good once more. Today, Tyrendelev is a living symbol of the resilience and stalwartness of Canabras, which serves as a stronghold for the Crusades in humanity's bastion in the war against the demon threat. Rest in peace, Tyrendelev. I wish I had gotten to know you better. The Crusades as Seen by Ordinary Folks by Tullius Mara. Real quick, I need to take a drink. Okay. A story recorded by Tullius Mara, from the words of Warren, a peasant from the village of Darkfords. Want to know why they call old gentry the Crusader? This is what happened. Ogar the farmer died, leaving 3 sons. The 2 older ones divided the land and lived their life, and Gentry, the youngest one, was a square peg in a round hole, as they say. He only knew how to bask under a tree and eat pies. What was he to do? Where could he apply himself? So he got a rusty old sword from the blacksmith's backyard, mounted his skinny horse, and rode off, over the hills and far away. Sooner or later, he came to a castle. Inside it, there was a knight's wife, sitting around waiting for her husband to return from the Crusades. So our Gentry sat down next to her, saying, "Fair lady, your husband is a great man, and you deserve all compassion. I am a Crusader myself, and used to fight the horrible spawn of the world wound." And so on he rambled. He sat behind the stone walls for a month, gained 10 pounds, became even more well-groomed, and in the end looked like a baron. But he grew bored of the knight's wife. She was always pale and sad, and cried for days, praying to Sarenrae. So Gentry waved her goodbye and went on his way. He rode and saw a mill over a river, and a miller's wife, rosy cheeks, plump as a partridge. Our Gentry cozied up to her, saying, "Lady Miller's wife, does your husband happen to be at home?" "No, my good sir. Last year, the Fae dragged him into the river," she said. So Gentry invited himself to stay at the mill. He lay on a soft bed, eating pies, drinking beer, and walking around the village. He had some nerve. He told everyone at the village tavern what a seasoned crusader he was. He feared no demon, and promised to show them what's what. So one moonlight night, when he was huffing and puffing on the window, he felt her grabbing his back so strongly that he couldn't stand it. He looked down, and there she was, a crone, horrible like a skeleton, with a crooked nose, eyes like embers, a hollow stomach, ribs sticking out, and claws instead of nails stinking of a ripened grave. Try as he might, Gentry couldn't get away. The crone held him tight, hissing, "Where are you going, my sweet crusader? Come on, put your bun in my oven." Oh God. And she stuck out her long tongue and licked her rotten teeth. Somehow, Gentry wiggled away, leaving plenty of his skin and meat on her claws. He ran from the mill in a panic, ran all the way to the village naked and bleeding. So he's running and yelling, "Demons! Demons!" Well, the locals gathered with their axes and pitchforks and came to the mill, but it was empty. The crone was gone. They did find an ugly corpse in the basement, though. They knew it was the miller's wife by her hair and clothes. That's when Gentry lost his mind. Now he sits under his brother's windows, staring into the distance, saying, "The demons are coming, the demons are coming." That's the only thing he'll say. Damn. That's kind of scary. The keen edge of truth, recollections, and admonitions. Why can't I say that word? Of the Inquisitor of Asmodeus. Ooh, Asmodeus. The demon lords, whose names are known to mortals, number no more than a few dozen, far more numerous than those who aspire to the ranks of their own abyssal realm. But who as yet are unable to make a bid for such power. There are hundreds, possibly thousands of such demons, but their names are known only to experienced demonologists, and to those unhappy fools who decide to sell their souls to the abyss, and fail even to find a worthy patron for their trouble. Time and time again, one of these weaker demons will secure a resounding victory, scale the heights, or should that be sink to the depths, of the demon hierarchy, already fancying themselves a demon lord, when they soon make a misstep and die an inglorious death. The fate of such a demon could serve as a lesson to the rest. But if demons possessed the capacity to learn from their own or others' mistakes, would they even be demons? No. A stubborn refusal to learn is one of the major flaws that distinguish the bedlam of the abyss from the well-ordered hierarchy of hell. The demoness Isiagna, she of the sevenfold swarm, serves as an example of such a fall from disgrace. One of the many daughters of Lamashtu, she possessed 7 bodies, 7 mortal women of the various races of Galarian, each with an ant's head, controlled by her own hive mind. She commanded various insects, swarming, crawling creatures. With ants her special preference. The author of these words witnessed the oath of obedience sworn by cultists of Isiagna with his own eyes. The witless initiate was forced to meditate while sitting atop an anthill. Jeez. However, the human sacrifices being carried out by this fool's brethren around the little town I was serving in at the time were far from amusing. It required no small effort to destroy the cultists, who had been summoning ravenous swarms and spreading madness in the name of their mistress. So what became of her? What fate befell Isiagna? The particulars are unknown, but consensus holds that the mistress of the crawling swarm ran afoul of the master of the flying swarm, the far more powerful demon lord Discari. Only Lamashtu's intercession saved her daughter from death, but not from abasement and the loss of her powers. Consequently, most of her followers forsook the cult of the mother, forsook for the cult of the mother of beasts. Today, Isiagna is worshipped by a handful of individuals who possess a stubborn predilection for sitting on anthills, and even to them, she can grant only minor spells. Interesting. Do you think that was... Didn't we see the vision from the storyteller? But Discari called that person his mother. I don't think this would be his mother. But who knows for sure? Alright, The Notes of a Traveling Priest. Ithuliak. By Tyrion Dean. Imagine this. A girl, whose name I shall not disclose, comes to town and immediately purchases the most expensive suburban villa. The newcomer spends unfathomable amounts on charity, even returning several tragically perished citizens to life at her own expense. She's very young. Her rough speech and manners indicate that she's not of noble birth. This leaves the whole town wondering, how did this young lady come into possession of such a huge fortune, and why does she spend it so eagerly? Those secrets were revealed to me when I was invited to the mysterious girl's house to provide healing services. The young lady reluctantly displayed something she'd been hiding from everyone: terrible acid burns. She forestalled any questions with a single word: Ithuliak. The monstrous black dragon's name was well known in the River Kingdoms. She'd lived in the region for hundreds of years, inspiring terror and emptying settlements. Many experienced dragon hunters attempted to put a stop to her, and all perished. No one knew where Ithuliak's lair was, or where she would strike next. The wounds of Ithuliak's acid breath left on my patient's body were terrible, but her soul was hurt much worse. The girl and her friends had found the lair of the dragon. They could have gathered hunters to destroy the monster, but they instead kept silent in search of profit. When the lair's mistress was absent, they would carry treasures out, little by little. Ithuliak suspected something was happening, so she set an ambush for the thieves, and they were dealt with cruelly. My patient pretended to be dead, surviving while the dragon devoured the bodies of her friends. She had much gold left at her disposal, but it came with the burden of memories that recalled devastated cities and countless people burned by acid. Unable to tolerate the guilt, the girl tried to atone for the ill-gotten gains with good deeds. I was able to heal her physical wounds. When we parted, she told me she planned to spend the rest of her wealth organizing an expedition to Ithuliak's lair to end the beast. I recently heard rumors that the villa had been abandoned for quite some time now. It's possible the owner left for other lands, but my heart tells me her bones lie in the lair of Ithuliak, the winged terror and plague to the River Kingdoms. That was a good story, I liked it. I wonder how many dragons we're going to see in this game, and if we're going to fight any. The Varisian Horror. When they reached the cemetery hill, the rain was pouring. In spite of the weather and the priest's weak protest, Regor had no intention of stopping. If his suspicions were correct, the evil that settled in the village many years ago had to be stopped as soon as possible. The local priest, whom Regor and Magra had approached for help in their quest, was alarmed that these strangers were accusing someone from his flock and decided to tag along so that he could defend the innocent, should the need arise. Ascending the broken stairs leading up the ancient crypt atop the hill, Regor quietly pulled out his blade and hid it under his soaked cloak. Once the two got to the hewn stone that served as a sacrificial altar, he spotted the gravedigger. Despite the late hour and the violent storm, he was digging a shallow grave. Before Regor had time to intervene, the priest, prompted by desire to clear the hermit of suspicion, went straight towards the massive, misshapen figure. The gravedigger turned his head, and at the first sight of Regor and Magra, started moving with speed that didn't match his proportions. He leaped far forward, and the shovel cut through the cold autumn air, striking the priest's head. Pieces of skull and bloody scraps spattered forth. And the gravedigger, letting out an unintelligible roar, lunged at the outsiders. Magra, who had already raised her hands, froze in terror. The gravedigger's gasping mouth was filled with dozens of rows of sharp needle-like teeth, and the sorceress's weakened mind was struck by a murky steam of abhorrent blasphemy and an otherworldly tongue. Gregor, however, had kept his composure. Dodging to the side, he slashed the corpulent body as if cutting open a rotten, bloated shell. With a wet smack, the gravedigger's neck and chest burst open, revealing to the mortal's eyes the beast's true form, one of a foul worm, whose sickening body was now gushing in coils out of the now useless human frame. The cemetery keeper was an abominable Vermlick demon. We know Vermlicks. Created from the soul of despicable scum that, in life, used to defile graves and disturb the deceased in the vilest ways. After rising from the bowels of the abyss and invading Golorian, he and his kind are always drawn to places that used to excite the minds and fantasies of their progenitors. Interesting. Learning a little bit more about those guys. Alright, we're getting some long books now. Okay, without a shadow of a doubt, expecting nothing in return, the life and feats of Lord Axelar Tresbot, by Nora Dindawar, Nerisian, Cruciform Cathedral Publishing House. Frowning, Lord Tresbot made a gesture for his people to halt. Everyone froze. No one dared to disobey his order, even one given with his eyes alone. Lord Tresbot loved to say that he could only win when his whip frightened his soldiers more than the demon's claws, and he succeeded like no other in enforcing discipline. The Lord approached what we took for a scarecrow from afar, left in the middle of the wasteland by an unknown farmer. Pricking it with his sword, the Lord made us a sign to approach. It was the body of a young crusader, a boy, not 20 years old, horribly broken, disemboweled, with shards of bone sticking out and shreds of skin dangling in the wind. Horror watched us from the stake. Eye sockets filled with worms. A contemptuous smirk crossed the Lord's face. Coward, he said through his teeth. Fled from the battle. Demons caught him, and he surrendered without a fight. And here are his useless fellows. The Lord kicked an inconspicuous bump under his feet, and it rolled, revealing an open helmet's visor, with greenish-gray mush inside, swarming with insects. We shivered and looked down, realizing the ground beneath our feet was a mix of shards of metal and pieces of flesh. Cowards, the Lord said again. Cowards and weaklings. They were doomed even before they approached the world wound. They should never have left their comfortable homes. What did they achieve? They delivered the demons a hot lunch. That's all. Let's go. While the slugs waste their useless lives, someone has to win this ridiculous war. Without turning away, or heeding the disgruntled crunching sounds from underneath his feet, he strode forward. We hurried after him, trying not to step on anything that was, until recently, a part of somebody's body. Man, Lord Tresbot's a badass. Alright, Yaniel. Yaniel, Paladin of Iomade, the Lightbringer, the Knight of Citadel Dresden, heroine of the Fourth Crusade. Yaniel disobeyed her orders by leaving the garrison to venture deep into the world wound alone. 2 years later, she returned at the head of a crusader squad she'd saved. Died during the fall of Dresden in 4638. Rest in peace, Yaniel. Almanac of the Tower of Estrad Museum. Gallery exhibits. Among the cloudy colossi. In this picture, the two angels, Targona and Lariel, are chasing and fighting a deadly Vrolikai demon in the air, several miles above the world wound. After this battle, the skull of the slain demon was long displayed as an artifact in one of Dresden's inner towers. Sadly, this relic did not survive the fall of the city. Farewell to Sarcosis. Ileandra, the legendary priestess of Polura, watches the city of Iz crumble into the freshly opened world wound. A caravan of desolate refugees, desperately fleeing to seek salvation in Mendev, can be seen here. Crusader Queen, a copy of the famous embossed bas-relief originally created by Master Derek Sunhammer. Young Queen Galfrey is portrayed personally leading her crusaders into the battle on the 1st of Abadius 4624 during the First Crusade. Here we stand and will not take a step back. Hand of the Inheritor, the Herald of Iomade, is depicted placing the first ward stone among the fortifications of Canabris. None will escape my all-seeing eye. Inquisitor Holren fights a shadow demon that he exorcised from his soldier's body. Seat of Grief. A view of the infamous Heaven's Edge estate. This is the place where most of Mendevian aristocratic society at once fell prey to a supernatural plague unleashed by the demons. A world long gone. A thematic collection of various artists' works on everyday life in Sarcosis before the opening of the world wound. The first triptych is dedicated to the funeral rituals held at the Pelurus Fall Temple for the deceased chieftains. The next cyclus of miniatures depicts various scenes from a woodworker's workshop. This form of craftsmanship held almost sacred status in Sarcosis. Several views of the city of Iz, the masterpiece of Sarkoris architecture, can be seen in the following series of engravings. Finally, the last painting, The Threshold Prisoners, portrays a group of spellcasters imprisoned in the infamous prison tower. The origin of the picture is unclear, but the woman in shackles that can be seen in the background is widely believed to be the betrayer of humanity, Aurilu Vorlish herself, who we now have kind of met. She did something to us. That was such a crazy revelation to me. I did not see that coming at all. Yaniel by a fountain. This painting is attributed to Deneza Roche, a soldier from the garrison of Canabris. Deneza was not a professional artist, yet she had one advantage over the professionals who created later portraits of Yaniel the Blue-Eyed, the heroine of the First Crusade. Sat for this unique picture personally, which undoubtedly gives it much greater historical value. Yaniel is caught during a rare moment of repose near a fountain in the city. The portrait was presumably painted from life over the summer of 4637, 1 year before Yaniel's heroic death during the Battle of Dresden. Reliquary exhibits. Wand of Zacharias. The wand of the famous mage Zacharias, who made his name during the heroic and tragic siege of the Lost Chapel. As the fortress warden, he sent his apprentices to break the siege in order to save the priests who served the chapel's many gods. Zacharias himself refused to leave the fortress, however, and is believed to have perished in the final onslaught. A popular legend says that the spirit of the brave hero still haunts the ruins of the Lost Chapel, waiting for a worthy crusader to bring back his wand and plead for aid in the darkest of times. This item was donated to the museum by Zacharias' apprentice, Mage Teldon. I hope he's okay. Vessel of Reyless. This copper vessel and the oil inside it were sanctified by Reyless, priest of Iomade and faithful crusader. A batch of lamp oil had been brought to the crusaders' camp, and Reyless took the vessel to move it to the storehouse. Reyless' faith was so deep that it made the oil shine all by itself, and the vessel became covered with engravings praising the goddess. This item was donated to the museum by Reyless' fellows in arms. Helmet of Scrotia. This helmet belonged to Bethistas Scrotia, Paralictor of the Order of the Gate, and one of the first Hell Knights to serve his duty as a crusader. During the most unstable and dangerous first weeks of the war, Scrotia saved the crusade from infighting between the worshippers of different gods. When a Hell Knight killed a paladin Ryomade in a personal duel, Scrotia stopped the imminent bloodshed by stepping up for his soldier and taking the blame for his deed. This was far beyond his duty, but Scrotia defended the honor of his order by proposing to wash out the insult with his own blood, Scotia agreed to be beheaded in exchange for a peace treaty between the two orders. His death put an end to the rivalry in the Crusader ranks once and for all, and his sacrifice will be remembered by all Crusaders evermore. This item was donated to the museum by Queen Galfrey, Sword of Ryomede. Tyrendilev's Claw. This is a claw taken from the Silver Dragon and Protector of Canabris. It was cut off by demons when Tyrendilev heroically saved a group of ambushed Crusaders from certain death. This item was donated to the museum by the Town Hall of Canabris. We regret to inform you that the bulk of the Third Crusade exhibits is currently not available for viewing. It has been moved to the museum's storeroom for restoration and cleaning. Please accept our sincere apologies. Okay, we got a couple more books down here. Looks like we got three more books. And then we'll be done with this, and that'll be the whole episode. Gwynno Pollen, Notes from My Travels in Northern Aviston. In the knowledge that the best place to observe the effects of extraplanar energy entering our world is the region formerly known as Socorus, I immediately set off for the desolate lands. Upon arriving in Mendev and making inquiries to find a guide who would agree to escort me to the lands bordering the World Moon, I came up against an unexpected impediment. The local rangers and guides categorically refused to help me. Desna, however, smiled upon me and led me to a local hunter. After 3 tankards of grog, he agreed to go with me to the World Moon and show me the area. By the time he had sobered up, it was already too late to reconsider. We had passed the last cordons, and had plunged deep into the forests of Socorus. Even thousands of miles away from the planar rift itself, an attentive observer can discern the anomalies brought about by the world wound. Insignificant differences that became more and more pronounced the closer one gets. The first thing that struck me were the unnatural trees that look as though they had all been sketched from a single exemplar. Then the quality of the air changed. It tasted different with every inhale from sulfur to caramel, from acrid salt to spoiled herring. According to the almanacs I had consulted on my journey to Mendev, one of the first signs of the world wound's creation was towers of black smoke billowing up from the rift. The terrifying sight above the southern steppe and the tales of my guide confirmed that the effusions of ash and poisonous fumes continue to this day, although I did not expect the air there to taste like one was standing between a confectioner's and a crematorium. As we journeyed on, we encountered the remains of dead livestock, dogs, and even people. Some skeletons bore the marks of demon claws, while others had clearly expired of rather more original causes. We even came across 2 perfectly mummified corpses that looked as though they had turned to stone. Skirting about a sparse and foreboding forest, we came upon a plain that had bisected a series of unnaturally uniform hills. I would have been only too happy to study said phenomenon, but alas, after several paces my guide was hoisted up into the air and quite literally turned inside out. After shedding my blood-soaked frock coat and the encumbrance of my souvenirs collected along the way, I hastily withdrew. Probably a good idea, buddy. Prayer Scroll. O Lady of Valor, Iomade, benevolent to the innocent, ruthless to the malign, with humble hearts we raise up this prayer to thee this day. Preserve our sovereign, the righteous Galfrey, from all harm, so that she may lead us to victory over the spirits of devilry and wickedness. Hey, they're not devils. Careful. May the holy angels abide with us, the hand of the inheritor who makes thy will known, and the silver twins, Lariel and Torgona, who led us into battle and healed our wounds, and others of thy servants and our intercessors. And take into thy hosts of righteous souls gathered at thy throne the martyrs Zacharias of Canabris and Yaniel of Dresden, who died for all our sakes. We trust in thee this day. We dedicate our works, words, and thoughts to thee. May thy name live in eternal glory. It's a good prayer. Alright, in the last book, Tome of the Minotaur, Sermons from the Labyrinth. We might have read this already, but we're going to read it again, just in case. O mighty be our Lord, formidable and sublime. His body is a bastion of flesh, rising up above all minotaurs. His head, with the visage of a goat, is crowned with horns of flame. His shoulders and raiment are emblazoned with the great runes, telling of his wisdom and might. In his hand he wields Isergal, his death-bringing scarlet glaive. Its dark blade cleaves and torments those who cling to false virtues, and who grovel before gods. Hail Baphomet! Hail Lord of the Beasts of Golarion, and Lord of the Labyrinth! Hail the scions of Baphomet, the mighty host, uncountable in number. I speak the truth. Bow down before your Lord and Master, and let his will lead ye. Worship at his feet, and ye shall receive what ye desire. Whew, okay. We have read all of the books. Man, that took a lot longer than I thought. It's a good thing we went straight to that, instead of exploring the camp first. Now, I'm going to put all of the books in here, at least one copy of all the books. Is there a way to... There we go. Yeah, we're going to put a copy of all the books. How do we... I've already forgotten how to split. There we go. And we'll sell the extra copies. So I'll do that. I'll probably do that off camera. But I'll keep doing this off camera. And take a little break from talking. Because man, that was a lot of talking. That's it for this episode, guys. If I'm able to... And by able to, I mean if I have enough time to make enough episodes, I might combine this episode with another episode. So you'll have 2 in a day, just in case. Because I know, there are probably people who don't really want to hear me read these books or don't care enough and want to just see the action or the story. So if I have time, I'll try and get 2 episodes out on the day that this episode releases. That way, there'll be something for everybody. But we'll see. I am going on vacation soon for, I think, like 5 days. Yeah, 5 days. So I'm working hard to get enough episodes out to have episodes coming out while I'm out. Said out a lot there. But, yeah, we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's it for this episode, guys. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you later.